Well, good evening to everyone. Welcome back to session 2 of Ask the Rabbi. Really happy that you came back. And I'd like to begin, if possible, if anybody has any questions or comments or criticisms or cucumbers or anything that they would like to discuss, this would be a great time to bring them up. No? Okay. So therefore, I'll begin with my agenda, and then you'll wish that you had started with yours. So official good evening to everyone. Before we embark on the subject matter of the evening, we're going to take on a couple of questions that I'm asked more than any other questions from Christians. And these questions actually they recycled back to me, not recycled, but they were brought up again this week in a letter from a student here, one of our students. And he's a true friend. He's a very thoughtful man. He's a very serious Christian, excuse me. And he wrote a letter to me with very great care and with a question that he said that he had carried for 50 years. And he gave me permission to share the question with you this evening. So here we go. We as Christians and Jews, what we have in common is that we're both people of the book, obviously. We share more than what we differ on. And tonight is about one of the places we read the same words but hear different music, which happens frequently because there are differences theologically between Christianity and Judaism. So I'm going to bring up an example of one of those issues right now. And I'm going to share with you how it sounds from a Jewish perspective. So the question is, if the temple is gone, if the Holy Temple in Jerusalem is gone, the Second Temple, as you know, was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era. So given the fact that the temple is gone and the sacrifices have stopped, the question is, how do Jewish people experience atonement? Has anyone ever considered that question or heard that question or wondered about that question? Because it's a beautiful question. It's an honest question, and I'd like to address it. And as I said at the outset, this is one of the most common questions I'm asked. So to begin, I need to discuss two Hebrew terms, two different concepts. In Hebrew, one of them is called kapara, which means atonement, or covering, or repair of a specific breach. The other word in Hebrew is called Yeshua, which means salvation, deliverance. It means ultimate rescue. Christianity fused these two concepts into a single transaction. Judaism kept them separate, always has. So when we are asked, without sacrifice, how are you saved? We hear two different questions inside the question. Tonight is about kapara, is about atonement, the everyday repair of relationship with God. Now, many Christian movements hold with deep conviction that Jesus is the only available path for a Jew to atone, for the reason I mentioned. If the temple is gone and the only way to atone is through the blood, then what can the Jew do to atone? Now, that conviction within Christians is most of the time asked or presented in a very sincere way. Sometimes it's presented in an organized, from a missionary's perspective, it's also something that's used against Jews. even in those situations, I do appreciate that the conviction is sincere, but it rests on a premise about Jewish atonement that I want to gently examine, not to argue, but to open up the text together. So to fairly frame the text, if we look in the book of Leviticus, chapter 17, it says that blood makes atonement. So the temple is destroyed, sacrifices have stopped, so how can a Jew be forgiven, is the question. Christianity's assumption is that sacrifice is the only pathway to atonement. That assumption is not from the Hebrew Bible. The Jewish response is older than that. The Jewish response is older than the destruction of the temple. The Jewish response is older than the building of the temple, even the first temple. The Jewish response is as old as the Torah, and the Torah is 3,338 years old. So, if we turn in the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah, to the book of Kings, the first book of Kings, Malachim, in chapter 8, what we'll see is a description of Solomon having just finished the construction of the first temple. The whole nation is gathered. The Holy of Holies is consecrated. The cloud fills the building. Solomon stands up and dedicates. Listen to what the king, Solomon, who built the temple, says is the purpose of the temple. You can write down and look at it later in chapter 8, verse 27. Solomon says, "But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built?" So on the day of dedication, Solomon says the building does not contain God. If heaven itself cannot contain him, how much less a building of stone? We move on to verses 30 through 53. Solomon lists 7 scenarios. In every single one, the verb is the same. He says, for example, when they pray towards this house, you hear from heaven and forgive. Not when they bring sacrifice, but pray, hear, forgive, 7 times in a row. I'm sorry for taking my time laying out the foundation, but hopefully it'll be worth it for you. On the day that Solomon dedicates the temple, he foresees the day that there will be no temple. He says so. He pictures the Jewish people exiled to a foreign land, even before the construction of the first temple. Which means there will be no temple, there will be no altar, there will be no sacrifice. And yet, if they turn their hearts back and they pray towards the place of the temple, Solomon says, "Hear in heaven their prayer and their plea, and forgive your people who have sinned against you." So, Judaism did not invent a plan B after the destruction in the year 70. Plan B was written into the original script. Plan B was written into Plan A by the king who built the first temple at the dedication of the first temple 3,000 years ago. All right. Solomon is not alone. We see the same teaching again and again. If we look at the prophet Hosea, he says, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice." If we look at Micah, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God?" Notice what's not in what Micah is saying. You don't see sacrifice, you don't see blood, you don't see a temple. Let's turn to King David in Psalm 51. He says, "You do not delight in sacrifice, or I would give it." This was, by the way, after a very big whoops on the part of King David with Bathsheba. He says, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, you will not despise." Now let's remember, David had access to the Mishkan, to the tabernacle. He could have brought any sacrifice he wanted. Says God wants his broken heart, not his bull. How are we doing so far? Okay, now comes the second exile. First exile was by Nebuchadnezzar. The Babylonians exiled us from the first temple in the year 586 before the Common Era, led us away to Babel, to the Persian, what became the Persian Empire. Then the second time around in the year 70 of the Common Era, the temple is destroyed by the Romans. The Jews didn't panic. They didn't need to figure out a new theology. We already had the answer from Solomon, from David, from the prophets, from the Torah. So the rabbis put in 3 words what we still learn today, especially Jewish children learn every day. 3 words. What are those 3 words? Tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah. Tshuva means to return to God. Tefillah means prayer. And tzedakah means righteous giving. The word tshuva is often translated as repentance in the Western sense. It actually means return. It means turning back. It means coming home. So the premise, you may have wondered, but the path back is always open. The moment you turn, God is already there from a Jewish perspective. I'll give you one more citation. In Deuteronomy, we read, the word is very near you, in your mouth, in your heart, that you may do it. Atonement is not far away. It's not locked in a building. It is in your mouth, in your heart. So that's how the Jew looks at the passage that the Christian, of course, sees somewhat differently. But again, the concept of atonement and the concept of salvation are 2 different concepts. And salvation is not something that we deal with as Jews until we have the ultimate salvation, God willing, speedily in our days. Before I go on, any questions? Any comments? Doesn't have to be on point. It can be about anything. Purpose of this class is to hear from you, to deal with your questions sincerely.
Thank you. Enjoyed that answer.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you. Let me bring up another question that my friend also shared with me that he gave permission to share with the class. Closely related to what we just discussed. And now we're talking about Jeremiah 31, which is probably familiar to most devout Christians. It's the verse in Jeremiah that uses the term Brit Hadashah, new covenant. This is one of the bases in Christianity to say that Jeremiah is referring to Jesus and the movement of Christianity when Jeremiah talks about the new covenant. Let me read you the verse. It's Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31. He says, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah." I want to share with you how Judaism reads it. And in so doing, I want to preface that by saying this is not a criticism or a repudiation of the way the Christian interprets it. This is open source code. Everybody is welcome to interpret how they want to. So I'm not here to take away what the Christian believes. I'm just here to show you how the Jew believes. And we have to go back to the original language that Jeremiah and the rest of the Torah was written in, and that is Hebrew. In Hebrew, the word for new is chadash. Chadash is translated as either new or renewed. Whenever you want to say new, you say chadash or a variation of chadash. Whenever you want to say renewed, you also say chadash. So let's look into Tanakh, into the various books in the Bible and see, for example, if we look at the book of Lamentations, we see in chapter 3 and verse 23, by the way, we're not going to be so technical and exact. The rest of the session, I promise you, is going to get fun. Or at least in my opinion, is going to get fun. But I do want to lay this foundation. Yes, Susan.
Whoops. Are you saying, first thing comes to mind is Kadash? We're talking Kaddish, or we're talking Kadosh?
Different verb, different spelling.
Different meanings?
So, and a different meaning completely. They sound similar to the ear, but they don't have any resemblance. They're spelled with completely different letters. So as an example, when we turn to the book of Lamentations, the 3rd chapter, we see his mercies are new. The word is chadashim, which is plural for chadash. His mercies are new every morning. In other words, God's mercies are not a different mercy every morning, rather they are renewed every morning. If we flip back into the book of Psalms in the 51st Psalm, David says, create in me a clean heart, renew, chadesh, a steadfast spirit within me. David's not asking for a different spirit. He wants his own spirit restored. Another use of the word chadesh is the month. As an example, Rosh Chodesh means the new month. Chodesh, chadash, same infinitive, same root. It's not a different month each time, but it's the cycle renewed. So when Jeremiah says Brit Chadashah, says new covenant, what is Judaism here? Judaism here is a covenant renewed, not replaced, a covenant refreshed, a covenant re-engraved, a covenant internalized, the same covenant in deeper form. Now, one other thing. When readers stop at verse 34, that's where most readers stop. But the prophecy continues for 3 more verses. If you look at verse 35 through 37, God himself speaking in the same passage that we just quoted, God goes on to say, thus says the Lord, who gives the sun for the light by day and the fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. If this fixed order departs from me, declares the Lord, then shall the offspring of Israel cease from being a nation before me forever. If the heavens above can be measured and the foundations of the earth below can be explored, then I will cast off the offspring of Israel for all they have done. Sit with that for a moment. In the same breath as announcing a new covenant or a renewed covenant, God swears, only if the sun stops rising will Israel cease being my nation. Only if the heavens can be measured will I cast off Israel. For all that they have done, even with full sin accounted for. So we can see clearly from at least these lines that the covenant with Israel is as permanent as the cosmos, according to God. So whatever the new covenant means, from a Jewish reading, it cannot mean Israel has been set aside because God himself rules that out in the very next verse. Verse 34 says, I'm sorry for all these verses, everybody. Hang with me. I promise we're going to have fun in a minute. No longer shall each one teach his neighbor, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. In other words, let's test that prophecy against the world that we actually live in. Do all people know God from the least to the greatest? Not in the world I live, or I'd be out of a job. Has the need to teach about God ended? No. Is there universal knowledge of the Holy One? The honest answer is no. So from the Jewish reading, the Jewish perspective of what we're reading in Jeremiah, the prophecy is not yet fulfilled. From a Jewish perspective, we're talking about a future era when Torah will be fully internalized. So, not to belabor the point, but in the Jewish reading of Jeremiah 31, to us, it looks like a renewed covenant, the same covenant, renewed in a deeper, more internalized form. The same people are referred to by name, Israel and Judah, whose nationhood God guarantees as permanent as the cosmos in God's own words. Not replacement, but renewal. So that was the second question I received. So we can jump into the learning for this evening now, or if there's anything that anybody would like to bring up, that would be great as well. Anybody have anything to say?
I really, really appreciate your thoroughness of your answer.
Thank you very much, Walter.
I hope you don't mind that I tell my friends that you're my personal rabbi. So the fact that they're a bit jealous, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter. Have you all heard of Dennis Prager? Everybody know who Dennis Prager is?
I don't think so.
Dennis Prager is a Jewish philosopher and deep intellectual thinker. And he does a lot of outreach in Christian communities. And I was at an event where he was speaking to a group of Christians in California, and he got such a rousing applause from everybody. And the pastor stood up and said, "Dennis, I just want to tell you that you are our second favorite Jew." So
All right,
anyway,
here.
thank you, Walter. So last week, we talked about what Judaism is. We talked about covenant, we talked about peoplehood, we talked about responsibility, we talked about the big architecture, if you will. Tonight, we're going to deal with something more tachlis, more bottom line, less abstract, and honestly, much more powerful. Tonight, we're asking, how did Judaism actually survive everything that we've been through? It wasn't just the destruction of two temples. We were chased out of every country. We had to undergo pogroms, persecutions, inquisitions, crusades. I mean, there's no end to it. So how did Judaism actually survive all that? How does a tradition that's been scattered across continents, speaking dozens of languages, living through every kind of upheaval, manage to stay recognizably itself? You got the question? The answer is going to surprise some of you. Judaism didn't survive because of buildings and cathedrals. It survived because of homes. Think about it. When Jews lost their land, the home carried memory. When Jews lost sovereignty, the kitchen table carried the law. When Jews lost safety, the family carried the identity. So if you want to understand Judaism, don't start with the synagogue. You start in the kitchen.
Rabbi, I love that. That is without a doubt so true. Because I also wanted just to add to that. Do you also agree? It's the but I've experienced it that way, that the women between, I mean, literally, like we talked today, the cooking, the traditions behind the holidays, the gathering for the meals. My Christian friends say all of our holidays and all of our, it always has to do with the food. I just found
Listen,
that
it's
so
true.
like just hit home, just so did.
Okay, good. I'm glad. By the way, the word for home and the word for wife are interchangeable in Hebrew.
Where
Just saying.
is it?
Sorry?
And what is the word?
Home is bait, but sometimes the matriarch, the woman, the wife and the mother is also known as the bait. So the words can be interchanged. But anyway, just one caveat. Tonight is not about copying Jewish practice. No one's being asked tonight to start keeping kosher.
Mm.
Tonight is about understanding how these practices that Jews have practiced from time immemorial, how they actually shape the people. Nothing in Judaism is random. Everything in Judaism is training for the soul. Even the parts that look the most ordinary are actually training for the soul. So I want to deal with 4 questions this evening. Last week we dealt in big abstractions. Tonight we're dealing with stuff that's close to us, close to the ground. Here are the questions. Number 1, why does Judaism place holiness in the home? Why does Judaism ritualize ordinary life? Why are food, intimacy, and time itself considered sacred? And how do these practices help Jews survive exile? So everything we cover tonight. Sarah?
Yes.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I think that because of all these laws, the kosher, the other mitzvot, the family members were not allowed to mix with the other people in the area that were not Jewish because they couldn't eat in the home, for example. So they stayed for themselves. They had their own neighborhoods, their own schools, and they were separated. So this way they did not mix with the population around them, and that preserved Judaism.
So Nahum, this is true what Sarah is saying, that due to the strict laws of eating kosher, we cannot go into non-kosher restaurants. We can't go to, we can meet friends for cocktails, but we can't meet friends for dinner at their home. Just for an example, but we're going to dig a lot deeper, into that right now. So everything that we cover tonight is going to circle back to those 4 questions. So let's start here. Judaism does something that when you really stop and think about it is genuinely radical. Judaism refuses to confine holiness to a sacred place, to a sacred space. In Christianity, there's a concept of sacred space. And yes, the Jew is supposed to be reverent in the synagogue, but not to the extent that the Christian is in their cathedral. We don't sanctify space as much as we sanctify time. I'll get into that in a moment. I'll just share with you anecdotally. I remember when living in Los Angeles, we had a bar mitzvah in our synagogue, and a friend of the family who came for the bar mitzvah was Christian. In fact, he was a Catholic priest. And I asked him to sit next to me. So we were there, and he was fascinated by the whole process during the services. After the services, this was a modest synagogue, and there was only one room. So after the services, in order to prepare for the meal, all the chairs had to be moved out, and then tables came in, and the food came on top of that. It's what we call in In Mamaloshim, as we call, as we say in French, it was balagan. Balagan is total madness, total craziness, watching everything taking place, chairs and tables being thrown around, dishes and plates and food. By the way, if you're a rabbi, you want to make sure that you finish your speech before the food comes out, because no one is going to listen to a word you say when the food is on the table. So all this madness is going on, and people are literally diving for the food. And my friend, the priest, looks at me with a quizzical look on his face. And he didn't ask the question, but I could see from his face what the question was. Where is your reverence? Anyway, I bring that up just because it's such a vivid image in my mind. The fact is that Judaism is not confined. It doesn't confine holiness to a sacred space. So most holy moments for most religions occur in a temple or a cathedral or a shrine or the site of a pilgrimage. For Judaism, it's different. The holiest moments in Jewish life happen at the dinner table, happen in the bedroom, happen with your children in ordinary time. This is not Judaism being modest about sacred spaces. This is not a fallback position after we lost the temple. This is a deliberate theological choice. Here's the reasoning. If holiness lives only in special places, it's not going to survive history. We are proof of that. Empires destroy temples. Exile dismantles institutions. Sacred geography can be taken from you, but homes travel. Wherever a Jewish family goes, the home goes with them. The candles travel, the blessings travel, the table travels. So Judaism makes a strategic move. It decentralizes holiness. It spreads it across daily life of every Jewish family. Every Jewish home becomes a migdash me'at, a miniature sanctuary. And this, more than anything else, is how Judaism could survive exile, by making the home portable and the holy ordinary. Any questions on this teaching? Okay, let's talk about Shabbat. Let's talk about the Sabbath. I want to start by telling you what Shabbat is not. Shabbat is not a day off. It's not a Jewish Sunday. It's not religious downtime. I'm going to mute everybody. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to jump in. Shabbat is something much stranger and much more powerful. Ready for this? Shabbat is a theological protest. Protest against what? To understand what Shabbat is protesting, you have to go back to where the Jewish people start. We start in Egypt. We start in slavery. And here's the question that Judaism wants you to sit with. What does slavery actually mean? Most of us think of slavery as a kind of ownership. Someone owns your body. Someone owns your labor. Judaism says yes, but something more. A slave does not control time. A slave does not get to say, I'm taking Saturday off. A slave does not get to say, this hour belongs to me. A slave does not get to say, no, not today. So time, in the context of slavery, belongs to someone else. So when the Torah commands that the Jewish people stop once a week, every week, without exception, that command is doing something profound. It's saying you are not Pharaoh's anymore. Your time is yours. Your time is God's. Your time is never again going to belong to your work. By the way, I'm not the best guy with Zoom, and I see two messages in my chat. Okay, we're good. I'm going to keep going. 1 second. So once a week, Judaism commands 4 kinds of stopping. We stop producing, we stop consuming, we stop acquiring, and we stop conquering. All 4. We stop producing, consuming, acquiring, and conquering. Because if you don't practice stopping, you eventually become owned by what you produce. Your phone owns you. That's why they call it a smartphone. Your email owns you. Your to-do list owns you. Your reputation owns you. The next thing that you want to acquire owns you. Shabbat is the weekly rehearsal of the truth that you are not owned by anything. Shabbat trains a person to say 3 things. None of them are easy. All of them are necessary. Number 1, I am not what I make. Number 2, I am not what I earn. And number 3, I am not what I control. And that, my friends, in Jewish thought, is spiritual freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom to be a person again. And Shabbat is not solitary. Shabbat is profoundly communal. You eat together, you sing together, you drink really good whiskey together. Yeah. With friends, with neighbors. You argue Torah together until somebody finally says, okay, enough, or they pass out on your sofa while everybody else is still at the table. People come over for Shabbos, it's like late checkout every time. They come at 7 o'clock for a meal, 1 a.m., it's still going strong. So Judaism does not escape the world on Shabbat. Judaism rehearses the world as it should be, 1 day a week. 25 hours, the Jewish family sits in a small model of what redeemed time looks like. Food, family, song, conversation, slowness, presence. Oh, I wish this was Shabbos right now. That's how I'm feeling right now. Susan.
Talk about slow. Would you please repeat those 4 things again?
There's no other
I'm
4.
still on drugs here.
I'm saying that here's what the Sabbath is all about for the Jew. It always starts with food, by the way, just saying. Food, family, singing, conversation, slowing down, being present. And then on Saturday night, we make a blessing on wine, on spices, sweet-smelling spices, besamim, and on Havdalah candle. Those 3 things are what usher in the whole, the mundane week. We break the Shabbat into the mundane week. We create a separation. We say a prayer. Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, God who separated the holy from the mundane. And then on Saturday night, after we make this prayer, the work week begins again. And you carry a little of that with you back into the work week. Any questions on Shabbat? Walter.
If I understand correctly, the fact that it was said that the Sabbath was not for God, the Sabbath was for man.
No, the Shabbat is definitely for God. If I said that, then I said it incorrectly. If I said that,
the fact that was just something that a fact that I remember that God made the Sabbath for man. Can you elaborate a little bit about, or very, very quickly, about this idea of the Sabbath year and the land rest in the Old Testament and how important that was and what that meaning of the Sabbath rest, and it seemed to have this holiness aspect to it that is sort of pervasive.
Sure. So thank you for the question, Walter. There is a concept in the Torah that still applies in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel. It's called Shemitah. Shemitah is translated as the sabbatical year. Every 7 years, on the seventh year, you have to allow your land to go fallow, meaning you're not allowed to plant and you're not allowed to harvest. Whatever is growing is called hefker. It doesn't belong to anyone. Whoever wants to take it can take it. Now, so when that happens, isn't it kind of obvious that comes year 8 or year 1 in the next cycle, it's going to be a lean year, right? Because you've been growing produce on your land for 6 years. And those of you who have any kind of agricultural background know that when you're growing year after year, the produce that grows in year 6 is not going to be as substantial as the produce that grows in year 1. Unless you got God that's your master farmer, and God arranges things in a way where year 6 is always a bumper crop, even though al piteva, by the natural order of things, it shouldn't be. There's so much produce that grows in year 6 that there's ample produce to carry through year 7 when there's nothing growing, and year 8 while you're waiting for your crops to grow again. So that's the sabbatical year. This is introduced in the book of Leviticus, in the book of Vayikra. And it's interesting because when this commandment is introduced, God says, when you enter the land of Israel, in the 7th year, you have to not plant the land. It should be a year of rest for you. Now think about it. The Jews are going into Israel. They got wars to fight. They got Canaanites to deal with. They got to start a whole new enterprise and actually plant things if they want to eat. But God isn't talking about that. God is saying, when you get in, don't forget, rest comes first. It's a gewaldic, it's a mind-blowing concept. This concept of rest, of sabbatical year rest. Every 7 cycles of these 7-year Shabbatot, these 7-year Shemitah cycles, on the 50th year is a king-size Sabbath, where not only do you not plant in the 49th year, which would be 7 times 7 is 49. It's not it's the 7th year, you don't plant. Also the following year, which is year 50, you don't plant. So those 2 years. But somehow everybody was fat and happy. Parenthetically, also during this 50th sabbatical year, whoever had a debt, that debt became forgiven. And in the 50th year, anyone who lived in the Ir Miklat, the city of refuge, was freed from the city of refuge. What is a city of refuge? It's a place that somebody who committed second-degree murder, manslaughter, not first-degree intentional murder, but somebody who unintentionally killed somebody else, would go and reside in this city of refuge so that they would be safe from anybody who sought blood vengeance. I'd love to go on with this, but I do want to get back to the material. I hope I did justice to your question, Walter.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I don't, the feeling that a woman gets with those candles, I am the queen.
Yeah, you are the queen. You are the Shabbos queen.
I'm grateful now. I didn't always know. I think I always was. It wasn't so obvious, getting the praise from my husband. that he reads to me.
My
after-
wife is a queen.
Oh, okay. We got a king and a queen on the call with us tonight,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank God we're home.
Thanks, Doreen. Thanks, Baruch. It's really great to have you on the call. I'm glad
Thank
you're
you
doing
for
better.
your prayers.
And Sheila is waving hello to you. You guys got to connect sometime. All right, let's move on to a subject.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Sheila.
Uh,
I wasn't waving hello. I'm
If
sorry.
you don't know Sheila, this is my Sheila. Okay, Sheila, go on.
Thank you. In regard to Shabbat
Yes,
and also in regard to Yom Kippur,
yes,
there are times in times of war when Jewish people have to fight to defend
Correct.
themselves.
correct.
How do we come to terms with that?
Thankfully, we don't have to come to terms with it because the rabbis spelled it all out for us. There is one situation that takes precedence over all other commandments, and that is pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh means saving a life. So having to go to war is clearly pikuach nefesh. You're doing it for the purpose of saving lives. So it's not as though you're getting an exception to not keep the Sabbath. It's not that at all. Rather, the law is you must go fight. That is the law. So there's no exception here. The law of pikuach nefesh is above the law of Shabbat. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
But Rabbi, doesn't that also apply to medical situations? Because when I was
Yes.
a nurse in New York, we had Orthodox women coming in. I did OBGYN for labor and delivery, and their doctors were Orthodox, and
That's right.
you can't, babies come on Shabbat.
That's right, because it's classified as pikuach nefesh. It doesn't need to be so dramatic as going to war.
Same thing, I thought. Okay.
Okay, let's talk about every Christian's favorite subject. I don't know why this is, but it just is. Let's talk about kosher. I don't know why Christians are so fascinated about kosher. Most people think kosher laws are about food. They're not. Well, food is the medium, but food is not the point. The point is restraint. Restraint. Judaism makes a quiet assumption about human beings. Judaism assumes if you can't control your appetite, you're not going to control power. So Judaism makes you practice 3 times a day, every day, for a lifetime. Every time a Jew eats, Judaism asks a few questions. Where does this food come from? Was harm minimized vis-a-vis the animal? And can I delay gratification just for a moment before I take what I want? So food doesn't become holy, you become holy. And this is the point that people miss. You don't sanctify food by saying a blessing over it. Food is not the holy object. Food sanctifies you. You let it. Kashrut, kosher, trains your awareness. Kosher trains you to pause. Kosher trains the question, wait, should I do this? We live in a world of impulse, and Judaism trains impulse. And once you can pause about something as basic as what you eat, you can also pause about what you say, what comes out of your mouth. You can pause about what you buy. You can pause about how you treat people and what you do with the power that you have. So kosher is not about food. It's about training the soul. a soul that is no longer at the mercy of its own immediate gratification desire. So, questions? Milk and meat, and how come no pork, and this and that, and why do you have to wait 6 hours after you eat meat in order to eat dairy, and why do you keep them separate, and do you really have 2 sets of dishes? Actually, we have 4 sets of dishes because of Passover, and because that's a whole other level of kosher. And what does kosher mean anyway? Nobody has those questions?
Yes,
Oh,
I have all of those
you have
questions.
all those questions.
Thank you for putting them into words for me.
Okay.
I have a
Well,
question.
go ahead.
Is kosher a combination of rabbinical law and Torah law?
The basis of all laws of kosher you'll find in Torah, you'll find directly in Leviticus. But the how-tos, the practical aspect of what does this mean, how do we know we have to wait 6 hours to eat a piece of cheese after we had a steak? Or if you're from Germany, if you're a German Jew, you only have to wait 3 hours. Or just as an example. So we can't mix milk and meat. How do we know that if we use a knife to slaughter an animal, and the knife had a nick in it, and it wasn't a smooth cut, or the animal's aorta was not cut in one clean cut, the animal automatically becomes unfit for consumption? Tons and tons and tons of laws. I'm going to tell you a brief story as an aside. FYI, every kosher animal fit for consumption, let's say a cow, after the cow is slaughtered, the shochet, the ritual slaughterer, has to open up the cow and look in the chest cavity and check for any abscesses, any infections in the lung. Has to inspect the entire animal for broken bones. All those things render the animal not kosher. So the story goes, in the mid-1700s, there was a slaughterer, a butcher, who slaughtered an animal, and when he went to inspect the lung, he saw an abscess on the lung. And he didn't know, he wasn't quite sure whether or not it was going to be permissible. So he took it to the rabbi, because we have rabbis specially trained just for this. In every kosher slaughterhouse, you have at least one rabbi working full-time for these kinds of situations. Well, the rabbi that he went to in this small town was none other than the greatest rabbi of his generation in all the world. His name was the Alter Rebbe. Excuse me. So the butcher takes the lung to the Rebbe, and there's a line full of people waiting to see the Rebbe, and he gets in right away. And the Rebbe has books scattered all over the table. He's busy with so many different things. And already the butcher is regretting that he brought this to the Rebbe, because the butcher was a very wealthy man. He was a very successful butcher. He could have afforded to just discard the beef. It would not have affected his bottom line very much at all. And he was really regretting the fact that he was wasting the Rebbe's time. But he was already in the door, and he already asked the question to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe looked at it, and he wasn't sure himself, which began a process of the Rebbe going from different bookcases throughout the room, pulling down books, looking to see what this one said, what that one said, to be able to find suitable case law to be able to render a decision. You guys with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Meanwhile, this poor butcher is platzing. What is platzing? I don't know. There's no translation in English. Platzing is, oh my God, why did I get in this situation? I feel so terrible about this. So finally he says to the Rebbe, I'm a wealthy man. Let me just discard it. Please go back to the important holy work you're doing. And what does the Rebbe say to him? He looks at him straight in the eye and he says, Are you under the misguided assumption that I was doing this for your sake? No, I was doing this for the sake of the cow. You see, my friends, there's a spark of God, there's a spark of divinity in everything in the universe. I'm talking about rocks, I'm talking about sand, I'm talking about blades of grass, I'm certainly talking about animals. And the highest and best use for a cow that's being slaughtered is for someone to make a blessing before he puts the ribeye steak, medium rare, in his mouth. Before he eats it, he makes a blessing. And that's why the Rebbe took the time to do it. So it's also kashrut, kosher is really to train sensitivity. Questions?
I do. I have
Yes.
questions.
Yes, Tucker.
When I was looking at a lot of the rules in regarding kosher, a lot of them, and I guess it's because I have a very scientific mind, trained in medicine, that a lot of the rules made sense for the times that they were written. For example, not the plates. The plates back then were very porous. They were wood, they were clay, and to keep them separate from meat and dairy, because or it would a plate that had meat would have the fat on it, would have more bacteria on it. And if you ate dairy, which is usually not a cooked product, it's a raw product, you can be contaminating your dairy. So a lot of things that made a lot of sense for the times. Mixing meat and milk also, again, cooking a pork. Pork at the time was very had more bacteria. Animals with the has something to do with the hoof. You can't eat an animal that has what type of hoof is it again?
It has to have a split hoof in order to eat.
Right, has a split hoof. Those animals were considered at the time very dirty animals. A lot of bacteria that they had. Same thing with scavengers like lobster, shrimp, catfish. Scavenger animals also were harder for people to digest to make sure that they were clean. A lot of things made a lot of health sense.
Right. From a health, you're saying from a health perspective, it all made sense at the time, but it doesn't necessarily apply today because you can eat bacon and you're not going to get trichinosis. That's the argument that people use as to the fact that the laws of kosher may be obsolete in these situations.
But right now we're looking also at the times that we talked about this today, that butchering animals need to be done in a very humane, there's a way of doing it humanely. Like we talked, like I'm going to be butchering my own chickens. What's going on in mass produced meat, and we don't have to get into it. This is a whole other subject that I'm very passionate about. These animals are very poorly treated.
Right.
We're having problems that they're mixing products, like your hamburger at McDonald's can come from about 5 different cows because they're mixing it, and that's not proper, and that's not a healthy thing either. That's why you have all these, they're calling meat back because it's contaminated all the time.
Deborah, if I may, I'd like to stop you right there because I get the point. We have the clock to consider, and I do want to address the question.
Okay.
So the point that Deborah's making again is that the laws that may have been sensible back in the day before there was hygiene, etc., do not necessarily apply today. Therefore, the concept of kashrut, of kosher, is obsolete. That does not hold water for us, us meaning observant Jews. The reason why is because superficially, while a pig may be perfectly healthy to eat, that's not the reason that the Jew eats or doesn't eat the pig. The reason the Jew doesn't eat the pig, the deepest, most spiritual reason that a Jew does not eat a pig, is because there are certain items in the universe that the Jew can sanctify and there are certain items that the Jew cannot sanctify. Those things that the Jew cannot sanctify, we are told to stay away from. So a pig is a classic example of an animal that we're not allowed to eat because the godly spark that's within the pig is not something that the Jew can elevate. Whereas if the Jew eats a ribeye from a black Angus steer and he makes a blessing before he eats it, he is literally releasing and elevating the godly sparks in the food on high. Crazy concept. I get it. I understand it doesn't make sense to the faint of heart. But the practical reasons for doing things are just the superficial reasons. We have so many different layers of understanding and so many different layers of commitment. And ultimately, what it comes down to for the Jew is God said no, period. And we don't reinterpret law. We do everything we can to not make ourselves too crazy. But at the same time, the same laws that were given at Sinai 3,338 years ago are the same laws that we are doing our best to practice today. And yes, there are certain laws that we are able to update, certain things that we're able to, that the rabbis have decided over the last 500 or 1,000 years, that yes, this is permissible, or what this really means is that. But so many things have come up, such as when the law said that you can't kindle light on Shabbos, they didn't know that there was a such thing as a light switch. So all these, so we had to adapt, and we had to use the laws in the Torah to make everything relevant for today. So, Susan, did you want to say something, or are you just pointing your finger at me? Oh, okay. All right, thank you, Susan. Do you want to say something, Susan? You got to take yourself off the mute.
I was trying to do a chat, but I was going to say is Rabbi New often talked about peeling the onion back, the layers of the onion, to get the deeper meaning and the many, many, many meanings of Judaism and the laws and Torah. And I was trying to type that in, but I can't see.
Right. So there's plenty of reasons, plenty of layers, as Susan said, as to why we do and why we don't. But just to summarize kashrut, for an animal to be kosher, it has to have two qualities. It has to have a cloven hoof, a split hoof, and it needs to regurgitate its food. The pig has a split hoof, but it does not regurgitate its food. A fish has to have both fins and scales. So those are just the basics. All right, let's talk about something that doesn't come up in most religious courses, and that's the subject of intimacy. Judaism has a great deal to say about marriage, about sexuality, about the relationship between husband and wife. And what Judaism says often surprises people from both directions. Judaism does not treat intimacy as dirty. Judaism does not treat the body as something to overcome. Judaism does not regard marriage as a concession to weakness. None of that is in our tradition. In Jewish thought, intimacy between a husband and wife is one of the holiest acts a human being can perform. It is commanded, not just permitted. Judaism treats intimacy as something dangerously powerful. Anything that creates life, anything that creates attachment, anything that creates vulnerability, Judaism says must be handled with reverence. And this is where the laws traditionally called Taharat HaMishpacha, laws of family purity, come in. We have so many laws dealing with when a couple can engage in intimacy and when they can't. And I want to address them carefully because they're widely misunderstood. These are not laws about rejection. They're not about something being unclean. They are not, despite what is sometimes said about the female body being problematic. They're about something subtler. If you don't know what I'm referring to, a wife is off limits to her husband during her menstruation and 7 days thereafter, for a total of 12 days a month at a minimum. A husband and wife can not only not engage in any kind of intimate act, they also can't touch each other in a non-intimate way. They're very careful to take a step back from each other. Certainly they're nice and polite and kind to each other, but the level of familiarity that they are used to for those 12 days a month, there's a step back from that. Now, again, we can do an overlay of all the practical reasons, meaning that if a couple do not engage in intimacy for a minimum of 12 days, and it could be longer, because every day during the 7 days after menstruation, the woman has to check to make sure that she doesn't have any secretions that might be blood. Sorry to be so graphic, but this is a tachlis. This is a bottom line conversation. I'm sharing with you what it's like to be living in an Orthodox Jewish world. All these things protect intimacy from becoming casual. Most of us have a little bit of gray in our hair. Most of the men I'm looking at have a little bit of gray in their beard. Back in the day, you can remember that it maybe wasn't so easy to abstain from intimacy for 2 weeks or more in the case of a month. You can imagine the excitement and the desire that built up for when the woman was available to her husband. And before she is available to her husband, she goes and she immerses herself in a ritual bath. That bath is called a mikvah. The mikvah is the water comes from rainwater, and the woman has to fully immerse in that mikvah before she comes to her husband. So bottom line is Judaism understands something that modern culture is frankly still figuring out. And that is that intimacy without structure eventually cheapens the soul. Not just the soul of one partner, not just the marriage, the soul itself. So Judaism builds, I was going to say rhythm, but I don't want you to think of rhythm in a Catholic sense, into desire. There are periods of closeness, there are periods of separation, there are periods of distance, there are periods of reunion. And this creates something extraordinary over the lifetime of a marriage, and that is called anticipation, respect, and chadashim, renewal, not repression, but sanctification. The Jewish marriage is not designed to be easy. It's designed to be holy. Questions on intimacy? Robin.
Is there any truth to the statement that if a man abstains for 12 to 14 days, that there's more male chromosomes in the sperm?
I don't know that.
So that's not a true.
It may be true. It may be true medically. I don't know anything about it. It doesn't.
Okay.
That's not a reason from a Torah perspective. That's not a reason. But what you say could be true.
Okay, thanks. And checking the pad of the woman is completely optional. I wanted people to know. Correct?
In Judaism, we're dealing with so many different opinions, and everybody is holding religiously in different places.
I gotcha. I understand.
It really depends. Listen,
Okay.
everybody in general, Jews, Christians, whatever, we're all holding on a certain level.
Okay.
And hopefully we all want to climb up to the next level because in life you're either climbing or you're sliding. So whatever we're doing, we should have an eye on how do we become holier. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be forgive the expression, but you don't have to be holier than the Pope. It means, you've got to take your own life, your own situation into consideration. And this comes up a lot in Jewish law when it comes to dealing with subjects like sexuality, subjects like abortion, subjects like homosexuality. And we're going to be getting into those things, I think, in session 5. So stay tuned for that. Any other questions on intimacy?
Yes.
Sheila?
What happens after menopause?
That's up to you, Sheila. There's no more checking. There's no more menstruation.
You know what he does?
There's an expression. Oh, yeah, I probably shouldn't be saying this. I can't help myself. There's an expression, I'll translate it from the Hebrew. I can't believe I'm going to say this on a Zoom call. Okay, here it goes. God gives nuts to men with no teeth. So what happens after menopause, Sheila? You tell me. All right, we're going to move on. Am I beat red? Yeah, I think you beat red. All right.
I love it.
Let's move on. Boy, this is
I'll have
turning
to
into.
look it up.
Okay. Let's move on to children. Judaism, quite frankly, is obsessed with our children. Not sentimentally, not in a Hallmark greeting card kind of way, but strategically. Look at almost any major ritual in Judaism. 3 things happen over and over. Questions get asked, stories get told, meanings get explained. We have what's called a Passover Seder. You Christians are familiar with the Passover Seder. The whole thing is structured around children asking questions. Why is this night different from all other nights? Or a Sabbath dinner. Parents, before they begin their meal, they bless their children. The Torah portion of the week is discussed. Stories from the family's history get retold. Think about even the smallest moments, putting a mezuzah, a little box that goes on the door, on the doorpost, lighting a Hanukkah candle, hearing the shofar, the ram's horn. In every single case, the structure is explain it to the children. Make sure the children understand. Judaism does not assume that faith is inherited biologically. Unfortunately, sadly, today we see how many in the younger generations have gone away from Judaism. So Judaism does not assume that being born to Jewish parents is enough. Judaism assumes that every generation has to be taught, modeled, and argued with. That's why in Jewish life, children are not asked to be quiet during rituals. Children are asked to interrupt the rituals. If anyone's like a proper Christian, I don't know what proper means, but like where everything is laid out and organized in your church, come to my shul, come to my synagogue, and you will see balagan mama. You're going to see bedlam. You're going to see organized chaos. The kids run the shul. They run the shul. They do whatever they want to do. They are yelling. They are screaming. Nobody shushes them. They're running through the room. They're playing tag. They're hiding under the table. You know those long strings that we wear? You know that they take the strings from one man to another. They tie them together. So they do everything they can as practical jokes all day long. We have an expression. If you don't hear the kids when they're young, you're not going to see them when they're old. So you got to let them have their way in the synagogue. They're asked to literally interrupt. Children are encouraged to ask questions. Children are allowed to disagree, because a Judaism that cannot survive questioning is not going to survive history. And after 3,000 years, Judaism is still here, largely because of the children and the questions that they are allowed to ask. Questions? Comments? Okay. Last piece.
Oh,
Go ahead, Susan.
well, I was just going to laugh because of the controlled chaos. And they always talk about
It's not controlled chaos, it's organized chaos.
PKs, preacher kids, whether it's Judaism or but in synagogues, there is a lot of freedom for the kids, and it's fun to watch them. And but I too agree with like Sheila and whoever we're talking about, the feeling when you go back to the home and you're lighting your candles. My mother gave me, when I got married, my brother got married, she gave me one of her brass candlesticks and one of my grandmother's. So my brother and I both have our mothers and their grandmothers. And that's what I light, every Shabbat.
So beautiful. These are traditions that pass down. Beautiful.
In the military, shines his, and they're beautifully brass, shiny. And mine is the dull patina with drippings and stuff. But if you think in a fire, what things you would take, I would take if I had to leave the house, that's what I would grab.
So beautiful. Thank you.
And
all right. I'm sorry, go on.
Just
Sheila?
Over what Susan said, I've given my grandmother's candlesticks to one of my grandsons. So
That's great.
Great grandmother's candlesticks.
Oh my goodness.
And
Wow.
he's I asked him if he uses them, and he says, no, not yet. I'm not ready. I put them away. I'm keeping them safe. So
Okay, that's amazing. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that, Sheila. Okay, last piece for tonight. Prayer, Jewish prayer. Most people assume that prayer is primarily about asking God for help, asking God for stuff, asking God for the people that you love. And yeah, that's part of it, but it's not the heart of it. Jewish prayer, at its core, is not about asking. Jewish prayer, rather, is about training attention. 3 times a day, we pray. Morning, afternoon, evening. We ask the following questions. Where am I? Who am I accountable to? And what matters right now? And prayer is what disciplines the inner world. Prayer realigns your compass. Prayer is the practice of pausing, noticing where you are, and remembering who you are here to be. And I know that I'm speaking for Christianity when I say this about Judaism. In Judaism, prayer does not replace action. Prayer prepares action. You don't pray instead of going out into the world. You pray before you go, so that when you go, you remember why you're going. So here's what I want you to take home. You are home. Here's what I want you to bring into the week with you. Judaism did not survive because Jews were perfect. We weren't, we aren't, we probably never will be. Judaism survived because Judaism embedded meaning into the smallest details of life, into time, through the Sabbath, into the food, through kashrut, through kosher, into family through intimacy, treated as sacred, into memory through children, through questions, through stories, and into attention through prayer. So the Jewish home, the one we just spent the last hour and a half walking around inside of, the Jewish home is not nostalgic. It's not a relic. Tell your grandson to take the candlesticks out of the drawer, unwrap them, and light them every Friday evening before the sun sets. That's the Jewish thing to do. Not a relic, not something that belonged to my Alta Bubbe or my Alta Zedi. It's not something we keep up out of sentiment for the grandparents. The Jewish home is survival technology. It's how a small people scattered all over the wide world kept itself recognizably itself for 3,000 years. Wherever we went, the home went with us. The candles, the blessings, the questions, the table. And the world, for all of its empires and exiles, never quite figured out how to take it from us. I'm sure you've all seen that statement by Mark Twain, who said all the empires, the great Babylonians, the great Persians, the great Egyptians, the great Greeks, the great Romans, made a lot of noise and poof, they're gone from history. Only the Jew survived. Okay, next week, we're going to step into something different. And that is how Judaism thinks, how Jewish law works, how Jewish argument works, how Jews disagree about everything. And somehow we remain one people anyway. It's going to be a good one. So between now and next week, I want to give you two small invitations. Number one, notice one daily habit this week that shapes who you are. It doesn't have to be religious. It just has to be habitual. And then ask yourself, what values is this habit training in me? Secondly, bring a question next week about law, about disagreement, about authority, actually about anything. But the more honest, the better the question. Happy to take questions, comments, cucumbers. Walter.
I'm greatly dismayed.
Ay, ay, ay.
I thought the fact that I knew everything about Judaism before this lecture, and now the fact that I confess that I didn't. So I enjoyed the meeting so very, very much. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome, my dear friend Walter.
I am learning.
We're all learning. I'm learning. I learn more from my students than I learn from my teachers, believe me. It's not just a statement that's a statement from Pirkei Avot, but it's true. I learn more from you than I learn from my teachers.
Mm.
Who else?
Me.
Susan. Hey, Susan.
I'm inviting, I see a lot of people up here from the mountains. And so Rabbi Markovitz's Torah study for a Jewish congregation of Blue Ridge, it won't be on Monday because it's Memorial Day, but it will be on Thursday at 11:30 to 1. But I will not be there. I have to be elsewhere at a doctor's appointment. So I had a text with 3 of the other guys, and we're all discussing what's kosher enough for Rabbi Markovitz.
I can answer that question. Nothing.
Well, the cookies, the cream cheese, certainly not the bagels. And I'm telling, and so instead of having, we may just have onions and lox and tomatoes.
Tell Rabbi Markovitz that he's going to eat a lot of cheesecake over the holiday that's coming this Thursday called Shavuot, and he can skip a meal. It's not going to hurt him.
But anyway, that is the effect of the 3 of us in conversation. And then the last person said, well, I've enjoyed all of these lessons on theology and rules. Why don't we just have coffee and cookies?
There you
So
go.
I have no idea who will be there, what you'll eat, but everybody, if you can come, you're very welcome to attend.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so there are classes offered in Jasper, in Blue Ridge, and in Young Harris if you are a mountain dweller. For those of you in the lowlands, like Walter, sorry, we don't have any classes at the moment, but we'll
Well,
let you know.
Rabbi,
Okay.
what classes are being offered in Jasper?
Rabbi Markovitz has a class in Jasper. Do you subscribe to his newsletter?
I do get it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's there on the newsletter.
Monday at
Can I
6,
just
Deborah.
say, he has the class in Jasper. Tony and I are going to because it's closer than Blue Ridge. The first week it was in the library. The second week it was in another building. And I'm still waiting to hear from Rabbi Markovitz as to where it's going to be. And it's going to be on Monday at 6:30 in Jasper. But I don't know where yet.
Monday,
Okay, that'll
Memorial Day?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm out of town anyway. Okay. I'll find out from you when his classes are.
Okay, any random questions, any crazy things that like you never
Quick-
wanted to ask and now you feel like you can? Robin,
Quick question. Would Rabbi Markovitz eat something that it says parv on it? My friend told me it means it's dairy and it's meat. It's okay. Marlene told me.
parv means
Parv.
it means neutral. It means it's not dairy and it's not meat. As an
Yes.
example, an
Eggs.
avocado,
Eggs.
anybody can eat. An egg, anybody can eat.
Would he
No issue.
be okay with that? Or not necessarily?
I don't know. He should be, but who knows?
Okay.
Ask
Just
him.
asking.
Ask
Thanks.
him. Okay.
Got it.
Who else? Oh,
Rabbi,
come on. Somebody's going to
hello.
be sitting on a question.
I'd like to ask something more specifically about when it comes to chicken and dairy. Um,
By the way,
I
who's talking? I can't see whoever this is. I don't know who you are. Who are you?
Gabriela.
Hi, Gabriela.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask about chicken and dairy because from my understanding, it says you will not mix the milk of the mother with the meat of the son.
Yes.
So my understanding is, a calf and a cow or goat and the son. But how did that start? I know some people said that it was because we were getting confused whether chicken was basari or not, or how did the rabbis decide that a chicken was going to be basari?
So the question is, thank you, Gabriela. The question is, well, first of all, let me just give you some history. Chicken for us is classified as meat in terms of milk or meat. So one cannot eat a chicken sandwich with a piece of cheddar cheese on it. There was a time up until about 150 years ago that chicken was considered neutral, meaning you could eat it with dairy or you could eat it with meat or you could eat it by itself at any time without waiting. But the rabbis looked around and they said, these Jews are enjoying themselves too much. Let's find a way to ruin it for them. No, just kidding, just kidding. That may have been what they said. I don't know because I wasn't there. But for the very reason that Gabriela mentioned, that it was easy for people to slip up because they were having chicken and therefore they might go ahead and grab a piece of corned beef. You see, it says in the Torah, in the 5 books, as Gabriela said, you shall not cook the meat of the calf in the milk of its mother. That's the basis of the law, but the law itself is not contained in the written law. It's contained in the oral law. Specifically, it's contained in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. And by the way, to get your when you go to rabbi school to get your certificate, you get tested specifically on the subject of milchiks and fleishiks, of basari and chalavi, of milk and meat. it is such an intricate subject. That's why a lot of people who would be great rabbis never make it into rabbihood, because it is crazy intricate and there's so many opinions. And to make it more confusing, Jews that come from Sephardic countries like Spain, like Portugal, like North Africa, like Iran, etc., hold by completely different laws than do the Ashkenazim, the ones that come from European countries. So just to make it more confusing. Thank you for the question, Gabriela. Anyone else? All right. I want to thank you for your time. I'm so happy that you came back, and I hope that you come again next week. I'd like to offer to you to tell your friends about this class and invite them to join us. The more the merrier. We got plenty of room. And let me just check this chat message. Thank you, Rob. Okay, Gabriela, you're welcome. All right. So if there are no other questions and I don't have any jokes, I'll say goodbye for now. For those of you who are Jewish, I will wish you a beautiful Shavuot. For those of you who are not Jewish, Shavuot is the 3,338th anniversary of receiving the Torah, the Ten Commandments, on Mount Sinai from God. It was the marriage between God and the Jewish people, and we celebrate it every year. And the way we celebrate it is by eating every kind of variation of cheesecake you could possibly imagine. And that's the most religious way we can celebrate it. So I encourage you, even if you're not Jewish, stop at the bakery, get yourself a good piece of cheesecake, and think about me when you eat it. All right, everybody. Have a great
Hey,
evening.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
One quick point. I'm a Christian monk and I do attend synagogue on Shavua because it is so important to my faith practice as well. The giving of the Torah was for all of humanity, but God gave it to the Jews. And if you're Christian and you've never been to synagogue, please give it a shot, man. It's truly an experience you need to have for yourself.
All right, I just got a message just popped up that said, I am not Jewish, but I will be attending the celebration. All right, that's fantastic. Everybody should celebrate. And as Richard just mentioned, yes, it was the Jewish people who received the direct transmission at Mount Sinai. But the mandate that we received from God, we didn't receive it as owners. We received it as stewards. We are stewards to share this with all of humanity. So everything that we have belongs to everybody. We are not an exclusive religion in so much as, there are certain particular things we do as Jews, but the morality underneath what we do is to be shared freely with everybody. And we recognize that these things do not belong to us. We are simply custodians. All right, very good. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening. See you next week.
Thank you. Good night. Lila Tov.
Lila Tov.